Attorney General Martin Hamidou, we are told, is gone. He's been sacked. What do you make of it?
Well, you can look at it from two aspects. We are told that he was fired because of misconduct. But this followed a number of, the press statement he issued expressing some frustrations at trying to fight crime and corruption, including party card bearers. This was a statement that was unexpected. It could have, it's possible that it harmed the image of the ruling party and the government. And so definitely some party people and government officials came out to condemn it, and there were calls for him to be removed. So it's probably not surprising that it has happened, and especially when it's also possible that some people were not happy with what happened. So yes, one, misconduct. We were not part of the meeting. We don't know how the misconduct, or what could be described as misconduct. But for example, if he was asked to withdraw those statements, and he refused to withdraw them, it could have been considered as misconduct. The other aspect was that he refused, or he did not have information, evidence to support what he had said. And if that was the case, I think he was wrong. If he wasn't sure of his information, shouldn't have come out in the public to talk about this. So you look at it from those aspects. Either he did wrong and he deserves to be fired, or he did right and stuck to his guns, and he has been penalized maybe for hurting some people's reputation.
If I'm to put you to the election, which of the two would you associate with?
No, you see, I'm not an insider. It's difficult to tell which one. I'm just saying that those are the two possibilities.
We have Dr. Arthur Kennedy on the line as well. He's a lecturer at the School of Medical Sciences, University of Cape Coast. Good evening to you, Doc.
Good evening. How are you doing?
We are great, and we hope you are doing very well yourself.
Yes, I am doing well.
Let me get your own sense of the matters involving the Office of the Attorney General today. What does it mean for you?
Well, what it means ultimately depends on the truth, and I think that we don't know the whole truth up to date. As the statement said, he was fired for some sort of misconduct. It depends upon what the meaning of misconduct is. As Bill Clinton famously asked, it depends upon what the meaning of it is. So it depends on the meaning of misconduct. First, there are two ways of looking at it, as your previous speaker just said. It is very conceivable that indeed he was asked by the president, for example, to provide supporting evidence for his allegations, and he could not provide that supporting evidence, and the president felt that he couldn't make such allegations without proving. As he said, he who alleges must prove. So if he alleged and couldn't prove it, then the president might consider that misconduct. The other side of it, too, might be that indeed he was asked not to pursue the Oyomi case again, and he said that he would not be able to obey such an order, and it was considered misconduct to say that he wouldn't obey such an order. The reason I say that is that I have had conversations with sources I consider fairly reliable, and they are telling me different things. People who both are very close to the president are telling me, on the one hand, that he refused to provide evidence and was therefore asked to resign, and he declined. Other people say that he did provide the evidence. So I think at this stage, the best thing to do would be to encourage the castor in the interest of transparency to maybe elaborate more on misconduct, or more importantly, for Mr. Hamidou, in the interest of his own reputation, to come out and give the public his version of what is it that happened. Whatever it is a sad day when a man who has been repeatedly offered an office and who appears determined to fulfill the office well is terminated. So it is not a good day for our democracy, but I don't think we know enough to say who is at fault or what should have happened.
Dr. Arthur Kennedy, you made reference to the possibility of the YOB case and he pursuing it. But I have before me the press release signed by John M Newman, Chief of Staff. And this is the final sentence of the press release. It reads, the president has further directed the acting minister, which is Honorable Benjamin Kumbo, to continue the prosecution of all government cases currently before the courts, including the Alfred Woyome case. Will that erase the possibility you raised in your mind?
Oh, not necessarily. You know, for example, we can say that people should continue the prosecution of all cases before the courts, including the Wyoming case. But sometimes, you know, it might be that you are replacing a first-class lawyer with maybe a not-so-first-class lawyer. At other times, you may be replacing someone who is very determined to get the results of someone who might be just going through the motions. So changing the Attorney General in the middle of the case, particularly if, according to inside information, it turns out that the Attorney General was relieved in connection with the Wyoming case, that on its own would have a chilling effect on whoever replaces him and make that person a little more careful about vigorously pursuing the case, particularly if that person is wary of party aficionados who have already shown their displeasure for the conduct of the previous Attorney General. So, no, it does make a difference.
Vitus, let me ask you, from where you sit, what are the implications for transparency with regard to the president's decision?
The implications for transparency depend on
that is for happens. Sorry, Doc, that question is for Vitus Azim, who is also on the telephone line.
Sure.
Yes, the implications are obvious. If I am a minister and I want to maintain my position, I would definitely be afraid to come out, to say things that have been said by my predecessor, if I am convinced that that could have been why he has been fired. So definitely it has implications for transparency, it has implications for the fight against corruption. It's likely to scare people from speaking out their minds. Even if the president invites them and gives them an opportunity to speak, they'll be afraid because they will not know how it can be interpreted. So definitely it has negative implications for transparency and accountability.
Stay on the line for me, both of you. In the studio with us, we have Dr. Michael White-Kwesa, and also Kobe Fiagbe. And I also like to pick their views on this. Let's make this as interactive as possible amongst all five of us. And so I will come to you, Dr. Kwesa, and ask you, what will your initial comments be? How did you receive the news? And for you, what does it portend for the current climate in Ghana, political?
Well, I think in the first place, when the Attorney General issued the statement he issued last week, there were two options open to the president. One was for him to have acted either in the interest of the ruling party, which is the NDC, or to have acted in the national interest. And acting in the interest of the ruling party would have meant the president would have sacked the Attorney General right after the statement was made public, so as to maintain some internal cohesion within the party and ensure that the party manages the crisis, sort of. That option was not exercised by the president. My sense of things is that the president actually called the Attorney General, or the then Attorney General, into the castle and gave him the option of substantiating the allegations made, which clearly shows that the president, to a very large extent, was committed to making sure that this issue is dealt with to the very bottom of it, if indeed he gave him that particular option. Now, the sense we are getting is, and we haven't heard from the Attorney General, the former Attorney General himself since. Hopefully, we should be hearing from him at some point in the course of all this. So the fact that he hasn't spoken or he hasn't provided the evidence clearly demonstrates that he could probably not be trusted within the inner circles of the government. Particularly,
we know that for a fact that he hasn't provided it, or you mean to the public?
The public. We haven't seen that. And,
right.
And indeed, if he had provided that, why has he been fired? In the interest of transparency, in the interest of integrity, in the interest of accountability. And of course, if he had the courage to...
But we are told in the press release that the decision is as a result of Mr. Amidu's misconduct at a meeting last Friday. That is all it says. And that Mr. Amidu's behavior is incompatible with acceptable standards expected of ministers and appointees of the president?
That is an angle we expect media men and journalists to push going forward. I think the press statement clearly leaves a window of opportunity for the media to continue to ask the castle if a lot more evidence or a lot more details could be provided about that particular conduct or that particular behavior that he was said to have put up. But having said that, I think that at the end of the day, ministers who are not parliamentarians serve at the pleasure of the president. They could even be fired if they are perceived to be perfect.
Even ministers who are parliamentarians serve their ministerial
positions at the pleasure of the president. The president has the authority to fire or to hire them and then fire them as and when he desires. And so we should not really see this thing as something terribly surprising or something terribly bad or reading all kinds of meanings into it. I think the real beef of this matter going forward will be how the incoming Attorney General prosecutes cases that has already been initiated by the outgoing Attorney General. Then we can begin to see whether there is something that is being covered or whether the government is committed to the fight against corruption, transparency, and accountability.
Kobe, you are editor of the Ghanaian Lens. This matter has seen a bit, I mean, in terms of the Attorney General and his press conference, etc., in your paper. And what does this mean for you, the final decision? Did you expect it, that the president will fire the Attorney General?
No, I expected that an Attorney General who makes an allegation and is given opportunity to prove it and is unable to prove it should be fired. Okay. And I expected that. And the only thing that would have redeemed the Attorney General, in my view, would have been if he had been able to substantiate the allegation. Now, I heard Vitals Azin made a claim that this is something that is going to intimidate ministers going forward. I don't think so at all. Because if anything at all, keeping Martin in government and saying that, look, you are under oath, you are not supposed to speak, would have been more intimidating. But relieving him of his post and therefore relieving him of all the oath that will hold him quiet says that, look, you have been unable to prove it to me indoors. Now I have relieved you of your ministerial oath and all that. Go public and go and say that which you cannot tell me in-house. So I don't see how that should be intimidating at all, especially given the fact that Martin himself in that press statement made reference to the fact that he is a courageous person who is prepared to speak the truth and damn the consequences. So really, it's not about intimidation as Vitals would have us believe. Trust me, if it were about intimidation, the best thing to do would have been to keep him in and keep on using the cabinet oath and all the other oaths that he swore to secrecy and all to say that, look, you are not supposed to be speaking like this, stay indoors and don't make any further comment. You understand? But this time around, you have been given a chance to prove the matter. You have been unable to prove it. And then the man says, okay, fine. Perhaps you are intimidated by the fact that I'm your boss. Let me take that cloth of boss off. Go home, stay on your own, analyze and come out if you can and prove it. And don't forget that once you are now as a private citizen and you say it, people are ready and willing to challenge you in court by way of either suing you or by way of taking other steps to redeem their image. And then you will have those encumbrances of office to say that because I'm a minister, and the president has to come in and all that. So I think that this is a bold step. It's a step that shows that this is a president that has nothing to fear. If he had anything to fear, he would have kept Martin in government and tried to use the whip of office to control him. But he says, look, I have given you the chance to prove it. You have been unable to prove it. Go and maybe outside the limitations of your office, you may feel free to talk. And that's, I think that the president must be commended. However, much anyone of us who want to score political points out of this, we must recognize the fact that this is a courageous president who has taken a courageous step, not to shield anything. And this is also in keeping with Martin's own testimonial on the president. In several communications, Martin himself makes the point that this is a president who has demonstrated amply that he is not prepared to shield any member of his government.